You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
What physical basketball
I was at the games,
versus
you were
physical
not.
fouling.
You watched them on YouTube.
Anyway.
I saw the games. I watched the games every time.
Well, we're here. I'm Bob Moats. Welcome to X's and Joe's, a podcast dedicated to decoding the winning formula in college basketball.
And I'm Mike Wiemuth, welcoming you to episode 42. Coaches Chip Stack Status Check. Who is playing with house money and who has to sell the house? Recorded on the afternoon of Thursday, November 6th, 2025. So, Bob, just think of that date. I totally forgot yesterday was Guy Fawkes Day. And I was just thinking, watching that game last night, I suppose we'll always remember the 5th of November as the day the long two-point jump shot achieved its glorious expulsion from the IU basketball player.
I think I texted you earlier. I like to say taking your cousin or your stepsister or your mom to prom ugly.
Yeah, you have many iterations of that. I know.
I now found taking the queen to prom beautiful.
Yeah,
taking the queen to prom beautiful when we saw that there was on the jump shooting short 0 for 0, mid 0 for 0, 3-point, and it was all 100% of their jump shots were from that 3-point range.
Yeah.
So a new day, a new dawn, a new era has begun, and it's not to say that we won't see occasional like pull-ups. I think, especially as Big Ten season comes into play. Yeah. There are some reasons, like if you're going towards the basket and you got a solid 12, 15 footer, there are some logical reasons why you would do that to try to beat rim protection. Yeah. But that being said, it's a counter. It's not a way of living. So it's I guess you can choose to have McDonald's every meal, or you can occasionally have it when you're in a pinch. That's usually kind of how that should be with mid-range jump shots. Not something you want to supersize every day.
Yeah, Wilkerson, Conway, and DeVries, I've seen them hit decent number of those like mid-range before. But again, it was based upon what the defense was giving at those times. So yeah, we'll see that occasionally. But just the fact that you could go a whole game without seeing any of them is, just something I don't think we don't even conceive of that considering the last 4 years. So.
Well, and beautiful offense, and I would be kind of one thing that we're all kind of just salivating over, and we listened to different fans that talked about a lot on Assembly Call last night too, that we're seeing just more space to work within, more action, just more modern actions and more modern concepts coming into the game, and this is even going back even with Tom Crean at times where stuff just seemed to be whether it was too complex, it was too simple, too outdated, too outmoded, just too ineffective. And last night you saw something that was, just looking like it's supposed to look, or at least how we perceive it's supposed to look. Yeah. Defensively, I want to say real quick that I love the intensity. There was a point in the second half, about 9-10 minutes to go. Tucker DeVries is diving into the other team's bench, the Alabama A&M bench, to save the ball off of a steal. And you're like, this is, again, the sort of hustle, the sort of grit, the sort of defensive doggedness that we've wanted to see out of Hoosier teams over the years. And we saw it last night with Darian DeVries' opening. A much better opening than it was, let's say, when Archie Miller opened against Indiana State 8 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I was at Carmel by the Sea in California during that ISU IU opener for Archie Miller. And I got to tell you, it takes really bad basketball to ruin a sunset in Carmel.
That would do it.
That would do it. Like literally, Willie and I are walking out there. It's like, oh, this is beautiful. It's like the nicest thing. And the whole time I'm walking towards the beach, I'm thinking, in my own mind, is like, all right, let's think the last 20 years. Has any coach had that bad of a beatdown in their opening game and made it to their contract extension? And I was like struggling to think of one. So.
You want to be, you as much as we wanted it to be exceptional, no, it pretty much just followed the path. And that, again, when we talk about chip stacks today and we're doing the status check on them, it's important to kind of just keep that in mind that in some cases you build an early lead and some days you dig yourself in such a hole that it's always remembered. Even as things are, going well, it's always in the back of the mind that when they turn, it's like, and remember that first game against Indiana State.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like that could almost be on it. Could almost be on a bingo card.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be on a bingo card. Yeah. I would say my only notes from the game, besides the ones you mentioned, we talked about prior about the fact that screeners are finally a weapon again, and that's very nice to see.
Yeah, and Conway's passing was a big one too.
Yeah,
you hit that up.
That was a big one I noticed. Is like, yeah, he even had one like, I love those midair skip passes where like, the ball kind of swings to the top and then like the kid doesn't even come down with it, immediately like reverses it back to like the opposite corner. And I saw like in the first, I think before the first TV timeout, Conway did one of those. But yeah, his passing was very impressive, and I think the off the backboard alley-oop to Bailey was maybe one of the least impressive passes he had that time.
I loved it only because that was something that was creativity and an off the backboard play that was finally one that we could get behind versus going, uh-oh, what are we doing here? So again, you mentioned it, you mentioning that, and I also kind of looking at some pocket passes that we haven't seen in a while at Indiana, maybe since Yogi Ferrell. We're going to do something new on X's and Joe's, something we're going to try. We're going to see if you guys actually like it. We're going to break down, just using some stills, one possession IU had offensively. And we're going to look at this, kind of highlighting what we saw and kind of what we were just talking about, especially Conway passing and the reading as well as the accuracy. So again, as you see, it's right after the first TV timeout. I use in a horns formation. DeVries, if you're seeing this, is at the top of the screen, and you have Sam Alexis on the other elbow. So again, horns, 2 on the elbow, 2 in the corners, and the lead guard up top. If you're watching this, you're going to see a bunch of space, and that space is basically you have 2 guys. The defenders on the corner guys are out because those, again, it's Sisley and Enright, both are good 3-point shooters. And then you see the action start taking place. And so on the next slide, as Mike moves on to 4, you'll start seeing DeVries moving off of, it's basically an Iverson action where he's going to cross from side to side. They ran this a lot for him at Drake and also at West Virginia the times that he played. So as he's moving across, Alexis is actually going to set a screen on his man. Now at this point, this read becomes very important because, like Mike, you were saying, pinpoint accuracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see where that big is. The man that was guarding Alexis is staying at home, and he's also beginning to shade towards DeVries. Yeah. The last thing they want to see is DeVries catching this, squaring it for a 3-point shot, or getting this other low defender to have to try to X up or basically scramble up to the ball and try to X out the big to get Sisley over in the corner for 3, or, just have him also be able to reverse it in some respects, a quick reversal of some sort, if or Conway could cut that as well. Yeah. So at this point, Conway sees all that space in the middle, and Alexis knows exactly where he's supposed to be. So you go to the next slide, and he's already got the pass in place as Alexis is releasing. It's a nice little bounce, like a little pocket pass, bounce pass through the defense. Alexis is able to catch it in the next one. And by the time the defense can respond to him, he is already in the lane, and he's going up for an easy slam dunk and 2 points.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one of the things that you notice, and this is something you saw at Creighton and at West Virginia, a lot of there's always the threat of the slip in any of the screen actions that are happening with DeVries. And especially if you have like whether it's like horn actions or you have maybe like
right.
Whether you're saying like a double screen, like sometimes like you'll have 2 screeners kind of the same area. Either one of those guys might slip. You don't know which one. And they, of course, if you're on the offense, That's what you want. You want the defense constantly guessing, okay, which way is this going? Is the left screener going down? Is the right screener going out? Are they going to fake? One's going to like fade to the corner. So you're kind of creating this like 360 dilemma for like each screener possibly doing something that you don't want them to do. And so you have to kind of like, just kind of choose exactly like, okay, well, what is the safe option here? Or like, what do I think they're going to do? And of course, on enough of these actions, you're going to choose wrong. And given the number of dunks IU had last night, Alabama A&M chose wrong more than a few times.
And it's one thing if you have the athleticism to be able to overcome those mistakes. Alabama A&M is not a team that has that type of athleticism or that type of skill.
Yeah.
Basically, IU did what they were supposed to do in a bye game, and in one of these types of games, they beat the predictor significantly, which resulted in a climb about a 9-spot climb both in Torvik and in KenPom.
Yeah.
That may not seem all that important because, again, small sample size, et cetera, but it's better to be rising at this point in the season than falling.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is the first crystallization point is going into feast week, going into November, the end of November, where these are where these teams are. And if IU can be ascending, it also kind of I think it kind of puts into the mind of the media tournament, even kind of looking at it from the standpoint of just in the conversation that this is a program, especially, that is doing overperforming based on what the metrics said they were going to do.
Yeah.
And at this moment, that means that you take a team like Alabama A&M that you're supposed to beat by 25 or 30 and you beat them by 40, 48, 49 points. You beat Marquette on Sunday, and you beat them. Let's say you beat them by 4 or 5 possessions versus 2 or 3 possessions. That makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
That you're doing basically that's how you're taking care of business. So we talk about that a lot on the show, but that's something as you guys are watching at home over the next week or two, not just how they're playing, not just how they're winning, but also the why behind it and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and just seeing, are we getting better week in, week out?
Yeah, and I think, we had a pod last year with, or I guess maybe it was earlier this year with Andy Bottoms, and Andy was kind of pointing out that point that winning obviously is important, but it's like the margin that you're winning by. Because if you're not winning above sort of the water line of what is expected of you in terms of like the metrics, then there are some wins you'll have that will effectively be losses. And certainly in the last few years had a few of those, like in the preseason, where it's like, hey, well, we won the game. It's like, yeah. And then you dropped, 15, 20 spots. And what good is that? It's like, how many more, it's like during the Revolutionary War, how many of those English wins did they have that would eventually result in what actually took place, at the very end? So, I was also thinking like the other side of, I guess, the noteworthy stuff. We've been talking about the shooting, obviously, and that was like the other like last thing I would like mention is I think I posted this, like the 2 posts I had on like X last night were basically related to shooting, and the one was that IU's combined is like 36 for 37 for the free throw line the last 2 games, which I don't think we've been able to point to any 2-game stretch where we've had anything quite like that. And also just I was reminding people about like Lamar Wilkerson. Of course, there's a reason that when we had that pod, I was kind of like, doing jumping jacks. The fact that IU beat out Kentucky for him. He's not just a quote unquote good shooter. I mean, literally, he's the only player last year in college basketball is top 10 in 3-point percentage and top 50 in 3 attempts. So those kind of shooters are very rare. There's only a handful of them every decade or so. And he's one of them. So there's a reason why that kid was kind of bawling out last night, is because, he's not just a decent or good or above average shooter. He's a special one. So I'm glad to see that he's kind of finally coming out and like displaying that a little bit more now.
And we would also just like to say defensively, he's looking a lot stronger than he looked a year ago at this time.
Oh yeah. He was a negative defensive box plus minus player at Sam Houston State. So last night he was holding off the bigs pretty well too. Got several of their you got that one center that he was like tangling up with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he got that kid was in a whirlwind after a while with Lamar guarding him.
And that's, again, something to just keep an eye on as they kind of switch back. They can actually really do a great job of disrupting another team's big. So as we're looking, and they tried some post doubles and some other stuff to try to just give different looks to put on, to just kind of see how it's working at this point. And I just think that they're going to be very creative in how they contain Big Ten large men. And they have speed and driving ability that can pretty much be very effective. So as we've been saying, a lot of the things we were hoping were going to happened last night on the first game. Again, it's Alabama A&M. We're not, going to throw a parade on this and have a fireworks display at the end of it with a funnel cake car from the Shriners. I mean, we're not pulling that routine on it, nor will we do the same on Marquette. But as we get closer and closer to the critical games of Louisville and Kentucky going, and then Big Ten season, the first couple of Big Ten games, it's a promising sign, a step in the right direction. Speaking of steps in the right direction, a few steps away from you this weekend, you're going to have the IU Alumni Association invading your great state of Pennsylvania.
Yes, can't wait. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun, the Penn State IU game. And I would say that, living as an IU grad here in Philly area has been, let's say, unique the last few weeks. I think I mentioned a few weeks back that Penn State fans, especially after that Oregon game, they were desperately hoping that IU would run up the score in the IU Penn State game, and that would be effectively the last nail in the coffin for James Franklin. Mm-hmm. And of course, now that didn't happen. So now everything's kind of this weird sort of like, I don't even know, vibe of sort of resignation. The only thing I've noticed, if I wear my IU stuff out, like in public, around the time at which they had fired Franklin, people kind of looking at me, and you saw online the same thing. Is like this idea that, hey, Signetti's a Pennsylvania guy. Maybe we can do it. And I had Penn State folks are pretty cool, so they just kind of talk to you. And I had one guy's like, so you think Signetti, you think he's going to stay there, or do you think he's open? And I was like, I think he's staying. He had also had that look like, why did you guys get the lottery ticket and we didn't? He's from our state.
Yeah, the easy retort was, well, John Wooden was from Indiana, and look where he ended up. Everett Case was from Indiana, look where he ended up. I mean, all of this is kind of, it's all, just because you grew up. Hey, we had Lincoln down in the southern part, and Illinois took him from us. I mean, it's not really kind of fair.
They claimed him, rather quickly.
But his formative years were in and around the Evansville area. I think that needs to be, again, more of a thing where we just we play that game. So yeah. Well, good luck and hang in, and keep the faith there. I know that we've got Back Home Network the East Coast division that you handle pretty well.
Yeah, we know people are going to the game too, so that's that'll be fun. So, from the network too. And I would wish all IU fans a good trip to Happy Valley. And this is a bit of friendly advice I give to just anyone about Penn State. Nittany Lion fans are generally pretty cool. They're cordial, pretty welcoming, especially compared to a lot of their big program, fan bases. But I often tell you that it's I compare it to that episode of Fawlty Towers when the Germans come to the hotel. And Basil keeps telling the staff, just don't mention the war. And it's very much in that vein that you can talk at length with Nittany Lions fans about just about anything in their history, except events of 2011 and 2012. You have to have almost a Stalin-like ability to purge that history from your memory. If you do, you should be just fine talking about anything related to Penn State football.
So yes, let it go.
Exactly. And as joking as I seem, that there's some seriousness to that. Like, Penn State folks are really cool, but just avoid that stuff and you'll be fine.
There we go. So yeah, but definitely bring up 1995 and how we denied a national title to them. I'm sure they're still not sore about that at all.
They love you. They'll be very cordial about that, right?
So So moving in, want to thank our title sponsor for the Back Home Network, Home Field Apparel, for their friendship over the years. Christmas is coming. I think all of you now know that now Halloween's over, and you will go to your local Walmart, Target, Costco, or wherever you do your shopping in bulk or for individual items. You're noticing the Christmas decorations are out. And you're also noticing that your radio station that was playing the 70s oldies has now turned to all grandma got run over by a reindeer all the time for the next 2 months. So on that, we know that Christmas is around the corner, and getting your orders in for grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, that daughter-in-law you just don't know how to shop for, even though she's got that Baylor education. Home Field Apparel is here for you for your vintage-esque t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, bomber jackets, and other items to celebrate the school of your choice. And being that there's a good chance that IU may be going to someplace warm for a bowl game for the National College Football Playoff Series, you can find sweatshirts and t-shirts to show your Hoosier pride, including showing the Bison, either be a Bison Mafia or one of the vintage Bison shirts that they have available, Bison hats. You can do that at Home Field. So look at www.homefieldapparel.com for that. Or Mike,
one last.
If you find yourself in Bloomington,
yeah, exactly. You go to the Stax Records store. I would definitely recommend checking out tomorrow. This will probably air, sometime tomorrow. So look at this today. The Game Breaker jackets that they're coming out with. I think 10:00 a.m. Friday, supposed to be releasing those. And I saw the IU one. It was really cool. It's like very Bill Mallory Copper Bowl era sort of like look to it. So it was very 1990s vibe. So I would definitely check that out. So
nice way of throwing in IU's last bowl game win onto the conversation. Wasn't that the Copper Bowl in '91 against Baylor?
It was, yeah. New Year's Eve.
Ooh. We definitely have the obscure down pat. So when we come back to X's and Joe's, Mike and I are going to be talking about chip stacks, current statuses of some coaches that we want you to highlight to just kind of keep an eye on over the course of the season, and revel in, if as a kind of move through the beginning parts of the 25-26 college basketball extravaganza next on X's and Joe's.
When the final buzzer sounds in Bloomington, the conversation starts here. The assembly call is IU basketball. Live post-game shows, smart midweek breakdowns, and no empty hot takes. Jared Morris, Coach Brian Tonsoni, Andy Bottoms, and Ryan Phillips dissect lineups, sets, and recruiting so you know what really happened and what it means for the Big Ten season, March, and beyond. Join the live chat on YouTube, then catch the podcast on Spotify and Apple. Just search Assembly Call and be part of Hoosier Nation's most trusted post-game tradition.
Welcome back to X's and Joe's. I'm Mike Wiemuth, joined by Coach Bob Moats. So Bob, I think you love this one. So when I was preparing for the show, an old Sports Illustrated photo popped up on my Facebook feed. I think some nice lead in for this conversation about the coaching chip stack. And I remember this one sitting on our coffee table as a kid, and it's from November of 1984. It was literally the same week as the Reagan Mondale beatdown in the election. But this one was with embattled Notre Dame head football coach Jerry Faust on the cover, with the title script reading, "I'm going to make it." Of course, which requires our history narration to chime in. He did, in fact, not make it.
If by making it he got out of South Bend, he made it out of South Bend. Back to Cincinnati. You bring Jerry Faust up in the city of Columbus, and already it's almost like there's a bit of PTSD coming back going. I swear to God, Blair was better than Berline. Blair Keel was better. I will go to my grave fight me on it. I will argue with you until the wee hours of the morning. And I may not be rational about it, but damn it, Blair was better.
Yeah.
And
in the case of Faust, and I know this is completely like off topic, do you ever think it was ironic that such an honest and decent guy like him was named Faust? Like,
yeah,
clearly,
really
he did not make the bargain that he is named after.
well, knowing where he coached before and where he ended up, if you make the Faustian bargain to get that job, I mean, you're really kind of playing. You're literally playing with fire, and you're playing with eternal fire. I might add. I mean, more painful than you could ever possibly imagine.
Yeah.
But when you think about the chip stack, the man literally walked into that job with a lottery, with just lottery money.
Yeah.
You know, and how rapidly that those stacks dwindled to zip. Notre Dame fans will counter with, well, we got the next hire right.
Yeah.
And they did. And then they got a few hires wrong. And then they got another hire right. And, but the whole idea of the chip stack is how rapidly it can kind of decrease. And one of the big things that I think, as we're kind of going through the conversation, you may hear me, especially, and Mike, refer to levels of success. And as you look at the Faust situation, you had a team that was a national runner-up the year before that basically plummeted to mediocrity pretty rapidly. Yeah. When you're losing the Liberty Bowl 2-3 years later, it's not indicative of an upward swing on your program. So in basketball, it looks kind of like this. When you look at the levels of success, a lot of, when you're a high major team, the vast majority of programs are like Alabama A&M, and they're really in that lower 65%, the lower 2/3 of college basketball. That's where you have programs who are looking to get those 14, 15, 16 seeds every year in the NCAA tournament, low major, some mid-major conferences where getting that opportunity for a bye game and the occasional upset, like when Evansville upset Kentucky a few years ago, is a huge program builder or just something that's memorable for that fan base. Most of your high major programs, though, reside in that 35% and higher. And most of your high major programs really want to be 100 or above. That's the expectation. The top 2% is basically 1 or 2 seeds. Then you have a next 3, which is your 3 through 5s. And then a 21 to 50, where you have kind of those very much those low seeds, as well as those NIT teams and those teams that were on the bubble. And then that 51 to 110, as we talk about Faust, there's also the idea of purgatory, and a lot of teams that are kind of caught in the basketball purgatory. And then again, if you're a high major team and you're in that 111, you're basically selling out your kid's college fund to play the last hand. Yeah. So if you're a coach, in these situations, you're really looking to try to maintain yourself in what's an acceptable level for your program. Remember that North Carolina is going to look at the world a lot differently than, let's say, Cincinnati, than, let's say, Vanderbilt. Yeah. So if you're Vanderbilt or Northwestern, that 21 to 50, if you stay there, is pretty good for you. Yeah. If you're Carolina and you're 21 to 50 for 2-3 seasons, it's unacceptable. Yeah. That, I think, is so there is some cultural and some programmatic expectations that kind of factor in as we have these conversations.
Yeah, it's like, I think, we were talking about this prior, when we were explaining what the chip stack was, I guess it was like last year when we had our conversation about that. Remember, like, you're the poker guy, I'm not. But I came up with the chip stack idea just because I was watching like ESPN World Series of Poker, and it just kind of like, clicked. It's like, well, wait a minute, like, so you have all these chips and you can lose everything all at once. Because at the same time, I was kind of having this like thought about, well, the whole 4 years, give the guy, give the guy like the 48 months, let him build up his roster, don't hold expectations for their first year or two. And then at the end of year 4, like an election year, you decide, okay, whether we keep or move on. And that's kind of was thinking like, okay, well, what's the model now? Like, well, what does it actually look like? And yeah, I just kind of thought, well, yeah, it's almost more like, we're like poker. I mean, you just like, you go all in, and now teams can fire coaches mid-year. They can fire them after year 2. and it just seems like we're kind of moving more in that direction. And so it's like we just had to have a different model in which to explain what was going on within college basketball. And of course, in college football, we're seeing that like an absolute hyperdrive. There's an absolute chip stack bloodletting in college football going on right now. I mean, it's so grim. You almost need a somber Levon Helm narration to capture the magnitude of the carnage that's happening down to our south in these past few weeks, and will be continuing as we get into December.
Coaches Kelly, Franklin, and give me another one real quick. No, Freeze, all perished. Yeah.
Pittman and Arkansas, there's a
Yeah,
lot.
I mean, I'm hearing this. You got this sort of thing that just kind of runs counter to it. And so if we're looking at the ultimate chip stack conversation as a guy that's short stacking, and again, right now he's all in on the blinds. We're looking right now, I think, at Hubert Davis at Carolina.
Yeah.
And Hubert's an interesting case because is he a bit of a, I wouldn't call him I would call him definitely a legacy type hire.
Yeah.
If we can get him up real quick. I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Okay. So as we get Hubert up here.
Do you think it's a Gene Bartow kind of scenario? Because he is replacing legend. Like when we think of Roy Williams and the transition to Hubert, but he's not an outsider, which makes things kind of like a little bit different than Bartow. So
well, and Bartow, it's interesting because I think as we're kind of going through Carolina that since Dean Smith literally came to town and started working for, I believe it was McGuire, right? Frank McGuire.
Yeah.
And was ascended to that position, and you have the legend of him being hanged in FSU, and then he goes on a win streak, and it was all history from there. The Carolina system it's almost like the Butler way before there was Butler, where they bred a massive coaching tree. And towards the end of Dean Smith, he had a succession plan in place with Bill Guthridge. Guthridge was supposed to stay. He took the program for a couple of years. It was always about trying to get Roy back to campus. I think Dean always wanted Roy as his natural successor.
Yeah.
They did Daugherty for 2 years. Daugherty exploded, imploded, whatever you want to call it. And then Roy takes over, wins more national titles than Dean, has an amazing amount of success at the North Carolina over his tenure of about, close to 20 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then he has an assistant pool, and Hubert Davis, when Roy decides he's going to hang it up, decides that Hubert needs to be the guy. And that was right coming out of the COVID years.
Right.
And Hubert comes in with Roy's players, with those relationships, and just has a monster season. He had Caleb Love and RJ Davis in the backcourt, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Had enough size. Who was the big dude with the hair, the beard? Do you have it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We can find that actually. We can actually find that. But as you look at it, it's Manick, Brady Manick.
Oh no! Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, I thought that guy. Yeah.
Remember, and Baycoat too. Yeah, Baycoat. They had
Manick was the lead singer from the Spin Doctors.
Right. That's who I'm thinking of. And I mean, they had him, and they had really good, just great talent that got them into a position where they made a final game. I would say what was probably the most disastrous sideline out of bounds play in NCAA tournament history. And it all just kind of, and at that point, you're almost in that sort of, think of Tom Crean in the Syracuse game with the chip stack. Yeah. He had a lot, but that one just kind of put it to where he had a bit of a loss of one. And then the next year, 2023, and that's when they went to IU and lost to Mike Woodson by a pretty hefty amount with Davis and Love just not producing.
Well, that was the big whiplash effect because they were number one preseason, and then that's the one that's one of the big things in the chip stack that you kind of notice is that there's these disproportionate impacts of wins or losses. It's not like there's like, oh, for each loss you lose this many chips, or each win you get this many. It's like it really just kind of depends on these weird scenarios and variables. And one variable that really kills coaches is when you have really high expectations going into a season and then they completely drop out. That's kind of what killed James Franklin this year. Like all the Penn State fans who said, "Oh yeah, we're going to be number one," and then a few weeks later, yep, he's gone.
And you asked a question at that moment of how did that happen so rapidly after making a college football playoff and being a top team, because they didn't perform well in the playoff and they never perform well against higher level talent. And when you think you're a program who has expectations of frequently being in the top 2%, you're a program that has expectations of being elite. If you can't beat elite teams, then it's pointing to your coaching as a problem. If it happens repeatedly, game in, game out, year in, year out. Yeah. And that was a problem Franklin had. It was a problem Davis had that season also. Again, coming off of, and again, it was a great run they had going into the NCAA tournament and going to the finals as an 8 seed. But you're supposed to go up from there, not down.
Down.
And they went down.
The win totals went what? Where is he at now? Yeah, it's 29, 20, then pop back up to 29, back to 23, which, of course, you're not getting up to 30s, which is what you kind of expect at Carolina. And you're right, Bob. Like, it goes beyond just the wins and getting to the tournament. And this is kind of a Schadenfreude point to make. One thing that really won a lot of hearts and minds on Hubert's behalf was that final home game of Mike Krzyzewski at Cameron Indoor. Or the whole week, it was like Mike Krzyzewski's last game at Cameron Indoor. And it was supposed to be like a coronation. It was like, every ex-Duke player had shown up. ESPN did the whole game day thing. Everyone had their attention on that game. And Carolina beat them. And
then turned around in the final four and did it again, right? They turned right around and did it. They did it 3 weeks later. It's like this, and so that should get you coached for life.
They ruined Mike Krzyzewski's exit twice. It's like his last game at Duke, they beat him. And his last game ever coaching, they beat him in the tournament. And so and believe me, down there in the Triangle area, that won Hubert all sorts of chips in his stack.
But when you go around the next thing, and then, again, like I said, I don't know how much that sideline out of bounds actually impacted, but I would say that in my estimation, after seeing it, I'm going, they might have some problems. And that was just my eye. And I rarely ever look at one sequence and ask that question and think to myself. Then you saw what happened that next year. And even the next season, when you come in as a 1 seed and you're bounced in the Sweet 16, especially coming off that, that stabilized it.
Yeah.
But wasn't like last year was all that great either.
Yeah.
And so last year, they basically sneak into the tournament and they're accused of, it's an accusation of favoritism by the committee because of because of relationships of their athletic director. And whether that's true, false, indifferent, and we've had that conversation in the off season, but whether it's on all those things or none of those things, the fact that perception is there of, hey, well, you got the opportunity. You're basically a Nepo baby at the University of North Carolina now.
Yeah.
It doesn't really sit well. And so you got to be thinking that Hubert was on the hot seat last year, survived it. You're going to have, every game for him that's problematic. And let's just go quickly to their schedule and we'll move on from Hubert here for a minute and talk a minute about someone else that's a different application to it. But if you look at this schedule, Friday is going to be a test. Thanksgiving is going to be a test. Because you have
for the viewers,
Kansas is on Friday. Then you have basically Radford. You have from basically Veterans Day to Thanksgiving. You have some bye games. Some of them in the 100s that could be problematic. And then you have Michigan State on Thanksgiving. You have Kentucky that following Tuesday. You play you play Georgetown at home on December 7th. We'll avoid a reference there. And then around Christmas, you have Ohio State right there. The Saturday, December 20th, you have Ohio State. So you have some test games in there that even though on some neutral site types of games, it's not like you have to win all of them.
Yeah.
But it may be a situation where you probably, if you actually think you're going to build the stack up, building the stack up means you need to overperform almost in those situations. Wouldn't you agree, Mike? Just because of where he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of, yeah. I mean, I totally agree, Bob, and I think we're going to find out pretty soon where he stands. I will say this, and I always say that with the whole chip stack, this is all a game of probabilities, obviously.
Yeah,
so nothing's ever certain as you're kind of entering this. But if I were betting, I think he's kind of screwed. And if I were betting, I don't think he's going to make it. And I think a lot of it's just based upon, I think the kind of talent boost that he would need had to be much more dramatic than what he got out of the portal. And I think he lost enough in the portal that just, it's like you're climbing a mountain. Oh God, I need to get 600 more feet to the top. And then you slip a few hundred feet. And then it's like, okay, now I just have that much more ground to gain. I mean, he lost Ian Jackson to St. John's, and Jackson's really good. I mean, I think he's going to be one of the better young shooters in college basketball. He lost Cano to Michigan. Of course, you ask the Carolina people, say that, well, he was asking for too much NIL, and there was drama within his family and stuff like that. So there's well, good riddance. But also, we know he's a pretty good point guard. So, and we don't know
bingo,
how
bingo,
replace him.
You get the toaster oven if you want it. You got the bingo prize. It's
I think this year that they're very thin in the up front. After you get past Wilson and Brashear
this year.
So once you get past their two bigs, I think they're just going to get worn out. And I don't see 30 wins on their schedule. And I think they need to get something like that at North Carolina for Hubert to survive.
Definitely a top 5%. They have to be in the top 5% at the end of the regular season, or in going into Selection Sunday. They need to be in that top 5%. And you're still not fully safe if you have a situation like a Calipari did towards the end of his career at Kentucky, where you lose to Oakland. And that's where they were like, "Oh, you want to go to Arkansas? Go right ahead. We'll help you pack." And that it won't happen like that way to Hubert. But I think it's kind of a question as to, this is an example of when you start seeing a chip stack depletion. That's where you are. And similarly, and we're just going to briefly touch on him because he's a Big Ten story, and it's one that we're interested in, especially with all the changes with just with coaching the last couple of years. Here's Steve Pikiell. And Rutgers is one of those programs, I think, that if you make the tournament every year, even as an 8 through 11 seed, you're safe. If you find yourself in that next 10% that we're talking about, that level 3, that's a great expectation for them. If you occasionally get to the NIT and you win a couple games there, it's kind of a similar type of outcome there.
Yeah.
But Rutgers isn't expecting to hang national championship banners. I think they have one banner in their gymnasium. It's an undefeated season in
1976,
right, where they lost to IU in the Final Four, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
So that's their one big basketball moment was there. Yeah. And I mean, Pikiell had a pretty good run where you saw he started off sub 500, moved up to up until COVID. The COVID year, they were 20-11. That was his best win season, and then a 16-win season where they were a 10 seed, advanced to the second round, and lost in the play-in round the next year at 18-14.
Yeah.
Didn't make the tournament in 2023 at 19-15, and then back-to-back 15 and 17 seasons where they were sub 500 in the Big Ten, and significantly sub 500 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So beating IU occasionally and Piscataway is not enough, and it probably won't be the case moving forward. So Pikiell's one of those examples, I think, of a guy who's basically all in on this season. He can maybe survive with a few wins, but it's a lot like Fran McCaffrey at the end, where you can kind of tell the writing's on the wall that Rutgers is probably going to be one of the Big Ten programs that's going to be replacing their head coach at the end of the year.
Yeah, I would say with him, and this is, again, it's with the chip stack, it's almost like, you know this better than I do. Every table has a minimum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So teams like Rutgers, it's a much lower minimum table compared to like Carolina, obviously. Like Hubert's at the at the platinum level, where the baccarat tables are like right behind you, with of college basketball. With Peichel, because they have such low expectations, I think that he's going to have a little bit more room, I think, to maneuver than some others. I think his problem is that they did inject some money in there, and I know that I know Rutgers is expecting some payoff from that. And I think last year just kind of threw people for a loop, just because it's one of those cases where the coach is kind of like a blue collar, hammer and nails kind of scrapper that comes up through the ranks, finally wins a little bit at the Power 5 level, gets just enough momentum and some cash on hand to actually land some 5-star recruits for the first time in his history and also in the program's history. And he goes through with it, has 2 NBA first-round draft picks coming to his team, and the team actually performs worse.
He finishes 15 and 17. He finishes 15 and 17, and in the last 4 teams in the Big Ten last year.
Which is definitely not where they were before. And so, again, we always have this conversation, especially around the sweet spot and all that, the whole XY axis of talent and experience. And he's definitely one of those that swapped experience for talent. Saying, okay, I'm going to be younger, but I'm going to give this shot with these like your kids. And some other coaches do it. Kelvin Sampson's doing that right now with like his roster, like swapping some experience for some 5-star kids. So this is not an uncommon experiment that coaches go through. His, I think, clearly failed. And so now he's got to regroup and figure out, okay, well, how do I move forward and keep my job into the future?
Of course. And we all know Kelvin's playing with a lot of not just house money, he's playing with Oilman's house money. And he's got a lot of it. Like even in his chip stack, it's pretty solid. I mean, we're not seeing Kelvin having any problems probably until he retires. God, never say never though. So that's, again, as we kind of look at one of the guys that we're looking at here at this point, that's one group that are really kind of all in. Like this is the year that one bad loss would pretty much just send them home for perpetuity. Another type, and this is one I wanted to just briefly touch on. You can make the argument for Dennis Gates also at Mizzou, but more than that, let me just get to the Big 12 here. Speaking of Houston, we'll just hit them real quick. Jerome Tang at Kansas State has always been an interesting case study.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Jerome off. I'm going to actually move this to Kansas State's history, because Kansas State's, again, one of those programs. They're sitting in the Big 12. I think they're kind of, I almost consider them like Iowa in some respects, that they I think expect themselves, they would love to be a top 5% program, but to them a ceiling is being a 3, 4, or 5 seed. I say that in many ways, looking at the last, other than some of the Frank Martin years where they had that 1-2 seed there, you go back all the way in the KenPom era, they've had one top 5% type of move in 2010. Yeah. And they've also brought in guys that knew kind of what they were doing, and Frank Martin and Bruce Weber, Bob Huggins for a season too. And now Jerome Tang comes in, and he had an amazing first season.
Yeah. Well, his first season was so amazing is that we actually highlighted it as like the sort of canary in the coal mine about how honeymoons are just going to be completely eradicated, or at the very least going to be significantly shortened because of the examples of Jerome Tang and Gates at Mizzou. Because Tang came in and just all right, and put together a new roster in about 8 weeks, and went to the NCAA tournament safely. And one of the best seasons K-State's had in quite a while, and it just kind of proved the portal can really deliver some goods for teams that are basically a blank slate coming into the season.
Basically put them in the top 2% or close to it. That would be the best way to look at it. He put them into that elite level, and then the next year, you're 8-10 in the Big 12, 19-15. You can maybe excuse that a little bit, even with the large drop from 25 down to 70 in KenPom, as you're seeing if you're looking at this with us. But that last year, now you're 16-17, and the question is, okay, can he turn it around again, sitting in that sort of 60-ish range? You're kind of working your way almost into that next 10% that, you're in that next tier that programs don't want to be in, especially in a conference like the Big 12, much like the ACC, where you don't want to be poverty. If you're poverty in those conferences, it's causing you problems over a period of time. And offensively, defensively, they've been okay. They've been fine. It's just offensively, they just need more firepower and more punch. And that also is another thing I think that hurts you when you're a coach, because if you at least have entertaining offense, you can sell more tickets, right? People want to watch you if you're entertaining offensively.
Yeah, we're going to talk about
grinded into
Mark Byington later, and that will be like perfect example of that.
Right. So Tang is in that spot where it's like watching him this year is going to be interesting, in that I think that they have some interesting, it's going to be interesting because I think that it's going to be maybe some style things could help him.
Yeah.
And I just flipped over to his schedule, and where he has some pratfalls when you start thinking about it, he runs into Cal, an ACC opponent, on November 13th, Mississippi State on the 20th, which is a kind of, I think that looks like a Kansas City game. Indiana, they come to Assembly Hall on the 25th of November, right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then you got, the Seton Halls of the world. You got Creighton on the 13th. And then at that point, Saturday, January 3rd, he's into the Big 12 season, which basically means you're in the grind.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's got to do something in some of those early games. What did you say?
Yeah, and I was looking on, it's because I sort of track this through the other sources, or like who thinks who's on the hot seat or not. They put him as in danger, but not like in immediate danger. That is Jerome Tang. Again, because I think the expectations at K-State are just kind of where they are. And also because he has shown that he can sort of put together a roster pretty quickly. I think people have the sense of, okay, well, maybe he'll hit another home run this time. One thing I think is interesting about him is that I think that first year he used a lot of small school portal kids that seemed to work. Like, Marquise Noel was from Little Rock. Naquan Tomlin was, I think, a JUCO kid. Yeah, he was JUCO. Desi Sills was from Arkansas State. I mean, he did get out Kajante Johnson from Florida, but for the most part, he was kind of like more heavy stacked with small school kids. Now he's chasing all these like big names in the portal. I mean, he brought in Coleman Hawkins from Illinois last year, Arthur Kaluma from Creighton, Doug McDaniel came from Michigan, and he got PJ Haggerty and he's like a basic All-American level kid out of Memphis. He's like going to be their best player probably this year. So I don't know if that's like a thing in terms of maybe what's causing them to dip a little bit, but it's something I talked about before in our prior conversations about the portal. The portal is going to be very volatile for some coaches that overuse the portal. It's going to be what's called very batch dependent. It's like literally, if you don't have like a solid baseline of returning players, your whole team is just dependent upon, was it a good batch or not? Did you just get like the right 3 or 4 guys that had the right level of talent, but also the whole fit? Do they get along with each other? All that. So yeah, I think with Tang, it's definitely he got the right batch year one, and he's still looking for that same batch. He hasn't gotten it again, and even though he's gotten more, probably considered higher level or at least higher attention portal kids from larger schools.
As we talk, I put up a player that when you were talking about those mid-major type or smaller school types, and this is a guy that really jumped out. Sam Story, the Godfather, and I were talking about him years ago.
Yeah.
I think he was a teammate of who was the big IU got? Logan Duncombe. I think he was a teammate of his. This is Nate Johnson. He's a 6'3" lead guard out of Liberty Township, Ohio. Amazingly, he just gets to the paint, gets to the rim extremely well, distributes extremely well. Looking at that assist rate in particular, he's a sort of player that really we thought could have been a great Power 4, Power 5 guy. He had a big shot, I think, with Akron in the MAC tournament last year. That's the sort of player I think you're talking about, Mike, where when those types of players go to K-State and Tang gets the right guys around him, then that makes him competitive in the Big 12. And again, you're probably not going to be at the top of the conference, but you don't be sitting at the very, very bottom of it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, maybe it isn't this year, but I would say that this would be that it's possible that if things go a certain way, the good people in Manhattan, Kansas will be asking some more questions and thinking, well, if we don't move now, we can't move. We don't want to go through this another season. We can't. We can only do 1 year of this. Yeah. Real quickly, speaking of high blind tables, and this is somebody who needs to do some huge things, I think, for this experiment to work. And I'm going to throw out John Calipari only insofar as you look at Arkansas is hungry for a winner, much like North Carolina football. Like that may be a saving grace. One thing that's going to hit Hubert Davis is that their football program is probably going to result in the firing of the athletic director if it hasn't already. Yeah. So, I mean, the AD at North Carolina should be updating his LinkedIn and getting his looking for work thing on the LinkedIn profile ready to go. But I think the same thing is going to be true in some respects for Arkansas. Maybe not this year, but at some point, the question on the Calipari experiment is, can we get more? Could we do better if we found a coach and we paid less and we put more into player compensation? I think that's where that's a question with Calipari more than anything else.
Yeah. And that's a question that's directed to the Tyson family, not the actual athletic department first.
Is there a difference? I don't know. I mean, is
there a Yeah. Yeah, I think Cal, it's just this continuation of this problem of roster churn. Again, like, as we've talked before, Calipari is a big reason that the whole sweet spot even exists. It's because, the underperformance of those Kentucky teams kind of like, made us start asking the question. It's like, okay, well, why is all this talent just like not, coming through? And of course, we came out with the model and all that. I think that he's still hoping for the next 5-star kid he recruits to be either Derrick Rose or Anthony Davis. And you just can't find enough of those kind of kids. And he's also, again, with the churn, he lost his top 6 players last year. He lost Davis, Thero, DJ Wagner, Nux, Ivisic, we talked about before, who transferred to be with his brother in Illinois.
Boogie Flant too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Boogie Flant went to Florida. So he just got like completely gutted with his current roster. He brought back Trevon Brazile, like the one sort of like rotation player they retained. Brought in Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff, two really good 5-star recruits. I think Acuff may probably be the best player on the team, honestly.
Okay.
So he's kind of like back in this, like, John Calipari cycle. Oh, lost a lot, but brought a lot of talent in at the same time. But he's just kind of swapping spots. He's like, okay, he's stuck at 23, 24 wins, loses all that talent, builds it back up. But is he going to get up to 28, 29 wins, 30 wins? And I don't think he's retaining enough. It's not a matter of he's not bringing in enough. I think he's not retaining enough at the same time to be actually to build the roster up from where it is. He's just swapping talent for talent year over year.
And with him, I think from an offensive system standpoint, this also kind of plays into to a major degree as well, because is he really kind of, you can get high offensive output and good offensive results with a brand new group of kids. You just have to have the right kind of mindset and the right type of kids to run it.
Yeah.
And his stuff has always been, it's very dependent on ability and skill sets, as well as just raw talent.
Yeah.
And playing in the SEC, does he have it? Especially when you're going up against, the guy that replaced you at Kentucky and Mark Pope, when you have Nate Oates sitting in that conference as well. There are going to be several of these. Todd Golden, obviously, at Florida. There's another guy. It's like you don't have to do much thinking to realize that he's got some dudes in there that are going to be that can get more with less, and showing it from a standpoint of not having to just overwhelm you with talent, which I don't think you can do in the SEC anymore. I don't think you can do it that way.
Yeah, no, totally.
Not with this roster. So
yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah, no, I think that was a good summary of the guys, I guess, that we probably consider sort of the headliners. I mean, obviously Calipari and Hubert Davis are just like huge names in the sport. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other guys that we, sort of like zeroed in on as possibly, maybe not like right away are going to be on the chopping block, but certainly maybe a hand or two away from, possible departure. So we'll cover that next on X's and Joes.
Hoosier Nation, are you tired of the same old takes? Say hello to Crimson Cast, the podcast that actually knows IU sports. Hosted by Galen Clavio and Scott Caulfield, they serve up sharp analysis, real talk, and just enough sarcasm to keep things interesting. Game previews? Check. Instant reactions? Double check. History lessons that make even our losses worth remembering? You bet. So whether you're tailgating at Memorial Stadium, pacing around Assembly Hall, or just avoiding Purdue fans, Crimson Cast has you covered. Search Crimson Cast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and join the conversation today.
Welcome back to X's and Joes. I'm Bob Moats with my good friend Mike Wiemuth, and we're talking about kind of a just survey of coaching chip stacks that are notable to the two of us, and talking about who's playing with some of these guys at one point could be considered playing with house money, but what we're really looking at now are some guys that may have had some house money types of moves, especially early, and are appearing now to that luck has kind of run out, or the performance at the table hasn't been where they want it to be necessarily. One of those, I think a couple of these guys who really need to show something soon. And they're both very interesting in that there's a bit of a dichotomy in their stories. A lot of similarities, a lot of dichotomy though. One of them is Thad Matta at Butler, who, and if we pull them up real quick, as I pull up Butler real fast. Butler's one of those programs that I think really, it's going to be interesting to see if they can continue to have the same, what you would call expectation they had back when Brad Stevens was there and Chris Holtman for a couple of those years also. They ran into some issues with their, with that Holtman replacement. And this is for, I think, the first time in their history, they actually brought somebody back.
Yeah.
Matta had been there before. I think we didn't even go back to that KenPom era. Yeah, 1 year in 2001 before he went over to Xavier. Yeah. And he's one of those great examples of the Butler way. And he spent that year at IU in 2021. Yeah. Took a year off. He's had some health issues that he seems to have recovered from. But Butler sitting in the Big East, and we like to talk about the Big East as you have four mansions and a shantytown. Butler is not a program that wants to be in the shantytown, and no team wants to be there, but I think Butler has a higher expectation of not being in that shantytown than, let's say, maybe even DePaul.
Yeah.
Who would like a 3-room shanty versus a 1-room. That's, I think, kind of where, there's not enough people who remember Ray Meyer there, I think, at this point, is there. Mark Aguirre's not coming back to, at this moment.
Else comma G's.
Right. George Mike has been gone a while, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we'll just do the DePaul list off of.
Right.
obscure stars of the past. Yeah.
Obscure stars of the past. But Butler, yeah, I mean, I think that there's some questions. I mean, you're looking at them right now firmly in that fourth 10%.
Yeah.
If they dip into the 111 and below area,
Mm-hmm.
and Mata's older, I mean, is there enough in his past, Mike, do you think, that could actually have him keep going on and trying to find just a different way to skin the cat? I mean, that could be looking at the D2 programs of UND and other within the areas, looking at some of the NAIA schools and trying to pull those guys in, as well as going into places like Valpo or Indiana State and trying to find ways just to build that up.
Yeah.
Is there a way for him to look at it that way, as well as maybe even going with a Painter Light type model that might work in the Big East?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard just because, he's kind of had this peak, right, at Ohio State. That was like the peak Thad Matta that, we kind of know. And as obviously you had mentioned that he has had health issues, and that always, as much as people don't like to talk about that, I think it does just kind of take some of the vigor out of coaches. And in this kind of job environment, especially today in the portal era, man, you really have to have a lot of like energy and a lot of things like going for you in terms of like propelling you to like get out on the trail as much as possible. So yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge. My view of it is I've always kind of thought that this hire that Butler made with Mata was a little bit like how South Carolina used to hire those elite coaches in football just before they were about to head to the golf course for good. It's like, they grabbed Steve Spurrier and Lou Holtz, right before they got on to tee off on like, hole number one. Like, hey, we got a contract here for you. You can do 4 or 5 years with us, and and just extend a little bit longer. We're not going to ask too much of you. We're not going to expect national championships, but just, come and stabilize our situation a little bit. It felt a little bit like that with Thad, just because the whole end of the LeVar Jordan era was just brutal. He had like 10 and 15 and 14 and 19 was his last 2 years, right?
Let's just look at that. Yeah, let's pull up LeVar. Yeah, because after Brad, they had Brandon Miller for that one season, and then that just went sad. Holtman leaves for Ohio State. Jordan takes over, and then you're 2 sub-500 seasons coming. Yeah. And again, you're looking at COVID years.
Had some good seasons. I mean, they not obviously like Brad Stevens, but Holtman had like some solid top 25 kind of finishes and kept Butler, in the conversation. And then LeVar had that one, I think his first year he went to the tournament and then just kind of crashed out thereafter. And I think when you're a program and just kind of the mindset of the fan base and the school, it's like, let's just get back to something stable, something like, that we can at least kind of like build something off of, not necessarily with this guy, but this guy could just, set the floor a little bit better than maybe the next guy comes along. I think the problem is that he's at 15-20 last year, 18-15 the year before, 14 and 18.
Yeah.
Before that. Yeah. So he hasn't gotten even back to like that part of the stage. So I don't think it would be like, they're going to fire him like angrily. I think it's going to be more like they'll quietly talk to him if he can't get this going, and he might quietly accept that. Okay, I gave it a good 4-year run, 5-year run, whatever the time frame is, and they'll look for something else.
And you have to understand the cupboard was bare. And I think that's what if you're a Butler fan, you're going to say, look, the cupboard was bare there. UConn came back with Hurley. You have Creighton doing Creighton things. You have St. John's bringing in Pitino, which game changes the Big East in so many ways. Villanova, like the dip happens when Villanova's at its pinnacle, and the dip continued when Villanova fell off, is really what it comes down to. Yeah. And so you've got this question there at Butler as to whether or not they can get the talent in there to be able to do it. If you look at this roster real quick, remember Jamie Kaiser?
Yeah, I do remember him. Yep, he's back.
He's there. So, but they got kids like the Robinson kid that came out of Indianapolis as a freshman. They've got and again a very interesting one that could be something that if you're looking at it like long term as to Mata being able to justify it. Jack McCaffrey, Fran's son, is playing there at 6'9" and playing at Butler. So you might have the ability to build something out of that. Again, may not be this year, but I mean, we're looking at kind of keeping them on a watch list.
Yeah.
Another guy similar in some respects that could be brought up would be Notre Dame has with Micah Shrewsbury in the ACC. One of those guys that I think everybody who followed basketball loves this guy, at least in Indiana.
Yeah.
Very few people say a bad thing about Micah Shrewsbury at all. And he had a rough go his first year at Notre Dame. And last year they were supposed to do a little better and ended up doing a lot worse. I mean, I think the beginning of the season was better than the end.
Yeah.
I would say the one thing he's got going for him, other than his, he's got he brought in a lot of new talent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we got Jalen Harrelson, which is obviously a big coup. Obviously IU fans were following that closely for the time in which it was an open question. Yeah, I think that what his offenses were so interesting and so high scoring and unique at the end of his Penn State tenure that people are almost kind of shocked about how boring Notre Dame looked last year.
Right.
And again, it's one of these transition things. It's like, if he could have carried a Jalen Pickett with him over, that would have been awesome. But obviously, Pickett was not available. So he's kind of really starting anew at Notre Dame. So it's kind of like, okay, that's the rebuild year. And you hope that, all right, going into year two, now you're no longer in rebuild mode anymore. Year two is now no longer like year two of the past. And so you kind of have to be really up to speed. I think it'll be interesting to see what it's going to look like now that he has a kid like Harrelson in there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, putting tough expectations on freshmen is not ideal. But I think at the very least, if he can show sort of the dynamics of the offense he's had before, it will help not only for recruiting down the road, but just kind of energizing the fan base a bit. Because last year was just kind of brutal and boring for the Notre Dame fans, and they kind of thought well, I thought we're getting this offensive genius, and he's got this really unique way of coaching, and I saw those Penn State teams and they were fun to watch, bombing the 3 all game, and now we get this last year. It's that was really unpleasant.
Right. And I think the words really unpleasant kind of come into play with that it is something that in Shrewsbury's defense, it may take a little longer. Notre Dame may also be an environment where it's okay for it to take maybe a year, 2 or 3 more years to maybe kind of do it, at least one season, maybe 2, to just kind of see how it all kind of factors together. The good news is, because last year was such a disappointment, if they are able to kind of get up to that sort of above 500 level, and let's just go back to their program history. This is a program that, again, I think when we talk about, they don't exactly have the world's highest expectations, and they're not exactly low, but if you're safely in that third tier, that's enough where you can have a good enough career. And if you're looking at it from Shrewsbury's perspective, who's kind of close to our age, 2 or 3 seasons of that, if he can kind of do that, maybe get a good tournament run, can maybe upgrade the next job potentially, out of Notre Dame or South Bend. But I think that was always the question, was that Notre Dame was never really designed to be his final resting place. I don't think it was designed to be the last place he was going to end up.
Right. Yeah, and it's important also, like you said, to look back on the program history. That's something I talk about. When we discussed the hiring of Darian DeVries, and I brought up the 20-year and 10-year and 5-year trailing program history, of like win percentages and number of wins per year and all that. And I said that, okay, well, you want to find coaches that are basically breaking all those records, are going well above sort of like the trend line of the averages the last 20 years. And so that's something you kind of look at. I mean, with Notre Dame, that's the one thing I think you have to kind of watch out, because they're at 62% win percentage the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And Micah's at 43% right now. So you're that far underwater, you need to get above water pretty fast. Because it helped that obviously their prior coach did not win a ton of games, but was pretty solid, winning like at least 2/3 of his games year over year. So that's kind of thing you have to kind of think about, like where the danger is, where you can kind of drown if you stay underwater too long.
Right. And that, and that's, I think, as you're kind of looking at Shrewsbury moving forward, that's one to kind of keep an eye on over the next couple of months, and see if that actually, we actually start seeing more from there. There's a couple guys I wanted to talk about just briefly too with this, that they're at high stakes tables with like Doyle Brunson and Hellsmith and Phil Ivey are all sitting at it, and they're sitting there basically going, "Hey, I got my, I won the." It's almost like they're at the table. They're in the role of we won a tournament on PokerStars.com, and we're just glad to be here. And you see them now. Lamont Paris at South Carolina is a great example of this. That they did make the tournament in 2024, kind of one of those, a very similar story. It was kind of almost like the Jerome Tang type of role.
Yeah.
Where they just had a really, really good season. Last year, it flipped. And now here he is this year in a stacked basketball conference now, trying to compete. And he's flirting with going into that fifth tier. Where not purgatory. Now you're in basketball hell for a Power 5 program, or Power Conference program.
Well, there's one bit of good news for him. Michi Johnson is back.
Yes, he is.
But think of that career track. And this is kind of like the hilarity of the portal area. Michi Johnson out of high school. He's from Ohio. I think he's from Cleveland or Columbus, one of the larger cities. So
Cleveland.
Okay, he's from Cleveland.
He's in Cleveland.
So he commits to Ohio State, plays there for 2 years, then transfers to South Carolina for 2 years. Then the year prior, he transfers back to Ohio State for 1 year. And now in his final year, he's transferring back to South Carolina. And I don't know about you. I don't know if we've seen an Ohioan trample a path to Columbia, South Carolina so repeatedly since General Sherman.
And Michi does pack a lot of punch, much like Sherman did. I have to give him credit. The kid can flat out play.
It's like, in soccer, they have this idea of something, unless you follow soccer, it's kind of an odd concept. There's something called on loan, where literally a team, like let's say in like the Italian league, will loan out a player to like some other team for a certain number of like weeks or months. Just like, okay, yeah, you can have him. He comes back to us. We have the option to basically bring him back. But yeah, you can have him for a few weeks. It almost feels like Michi's like, is he an Ohio State guy that's just on loan to South Carolina? Or did South Carolina loan him to Ohio State and he's just coming back? It's like, he's got this Kim Philby thing going on. We're trying to figure out exactly like who's working for at any given time.
Well, and I mean, you have to kind of look at the overlap with Thornton, right? Thornton would be the overlap guy there in some respects, because he was there, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to get playing time at South Carolina.
Yeah,
and he gets his PT at South Carolina, ends up helping them on their run in 2024, and then Holtman brings him back, and Holtman gets fired. Yeah. So he then saved his eligibility so he could do another year, and then Lamont Paris says, let's come on back down here.
Yeah.
And if you kind of
Lamont is from the Midwest, he has good ties to
true
recruiting in Ohio, so it's not completely out of the blue. Like well, why is he going down there? It's like, well, there's some connections there.
So again, you're looking at a roster that we're not really sure how it's all going to kind of look, but you have a schedule that it doesn't look like they have a whole lot before they get into SEC season. Yeah. So it's definitely when he can pad wins on. I mean, I think their toughest game as it currently stands is Clemson on December 16th, which makes sense why you would have that game, the rivalry game they have down there.
Yeah.
You put a surprise there, take care of business against Butler and Northwestern. Beat, if you can kind of just come into that SEC season with double-digit wins.
Yeah.
It might be a little more what you would call tenable for him to maybe survive, be able to maybe even build something coming out of this season.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, to another SEC team real quick to kind of cover, Oklahoma with Porter Moser, who had that great run at Loyola Chicago. And condolences to Loyola Chicago. Sister Gina I just saw passed away recently, right?
Yes, she was like 105, 106.
Yeah. Unbelievable story. And just and Moser was someone that, again, we had talked about for potential IU fill-ins and some other types of areas, but he's been kind of languishing there. Oklahoma did make the tournament last year, but it's always a little tenuous down in Norman, and especially under these circumstances where it's like if Moser can find a way, I don't know if he stays there. Do you think if he stays at this level, would that be enough for them?
Yeah, I kind of like flagged him under the Earl Bruce syndrome. He's kind of trapped in that 2019, 21 win range, which that doesn't kill you at a place like Oklahoma. It's just that it's like a slow air leak from your tire that, you can survive this for a while, but 2 or 3, miles the road, maybe it just goes flat eventually. And I feel like he's kind of in that zone where no one's screaming for him to go out the door quite yet. He went to the NCAA tournament last year for the first time. So that's like the one sort of like bump that he might get is the fact that, okay, thinking chip stacks, as long as you're doing something that's a little bit better than the last year, that buys you a little bit of time and kind of keeps the dogs, off the trail just long enough. But you have to keep building from that. You just can't say, okay, well, because if he goes to the tournament this year, 20 wins, goes in the tournament, okay, it's not really building anything more than what you had before. And again, then the air starts to leak out of the tire again. And so I think that's a little bit of the problem like Hayes has, is that I don't think he's going to meet danger, but he's kind of got the Earl Bruce syndrome problem where the reason I call the Earl Bruce syndrome is because Earl Bruce literally went like 9-3, like 5 years in a row. And coming off of Woody Hayes, the Ohio State fans just kind of got bored. It's like, we're stuck. Mm-hmm. We're not bad, just kind of stuck. We know that there's a ceiling and Earl can't get us above that. And then
you lose to Indiana back-to-back years, and then it's time to go to the farm, Earl. You got to go to the special farm where all the animals, where all the old dogs go, and it's kind of like the same thing with Moser. You're right with that. I would also add that he can also linger on just with chip stack wins in Oklahoma if he does something like Rick Barnes comes in to there and they beat him. And they get a court storm. They have a really good SEC tournament where they knock off a couple of teams. I mean, that's the sort of thing where you can kind of continue. And for a guy like Moser, who I think, it's always a thing where he can kind of look at the next couple, staying in that job for a period of time wouldn't kill him. And I think he'd be okay with that. It's just, you're kind of waiting for that one season where they end up going like 11 and 20. Yeah. And that might be the one that kills him, that does him in. But if he continues down this path, he might survive sitting in there. And I don't think a lot of SEC teams would be so that upset if he just stayed there doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Real fast.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very okay. BYU. Here's Kevin Young. Wait, Mark Byington. No, I had Byington. Wait.
Yeah, no, BYU is very safe.
Incredibly safe. What am I doing here? Who do I need to pull up? Sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Who do I need to get?
You're going to Vanderbilt with.
Oh, Vanderbilt. Yeah. Speaking of the SEC, right. That is definitely a high risk, high reward type situation right now at Byington, because I think if you're looking at it, looking at Byington, he's one of those that can pull into, if he keeps this up, he could find himself in a much better job.
Yeah.
And I think that's where his reward is. If he can do kind of what Vanderbilt's doing in football, you can start finding, the Vandy pimp becomes much more applicable.
You love referencing that, don't you?
Well, it's just, I watch these and it's like, they're just so damn fascinating. It's like how this little troop of YouTube guys, people are doing these characters of these football programs, and they've got Vanderbilt as kind of like, they're like the cousin who is really small and playing running back on this little peewee team, and the rest of them are all like, I don't know, state all-stars, and they're cheering him on.
I just love the idea of like the word contrast between like
yeah.
School and sort of like this ill-reputed sort of it's like the Princeton strippers or the
right or
the Oxford harlot.
Or the BYU shot chicks, whatever you want to call it, it's like, or the southern the Liberty shot chicks, it's one of those types of deals where you just don't really know how that's going to kind of go over. But Vanderbilt, it's something where he really jumped up hard and jumped up again, so it's almost like he's skipping levels on the way up, and you are in a high risk, high reward situation, because if the bottom falls out, kind of like, again, a Dennis Gates type situation, you're in danger of going back to some of these other programs. But I also have a feeling that Byington is one of those guys that is doing it in a way that's going to, I don't know, maybe insulate him a little bit. I mean, it is entertaining to watch.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to help him. Is his offense scores, and the last days of Stackhouse were not great. So that contrast bias, I think, is going to help him a little bit. And you're right, the entertainment value will be enough to where you hope that they can maybe start pulling in a few extra, elite wings and guards going into next year. So maybe they can take the next step, assuming he's still there and, he hasn't been plucked by an upper tier school. Like one of the schools that we talked about earlier,
right? Arkansas decides to try it again, or Carolina would be an interesting choice for him too. Especially if Carolina is looking to make a move to another conference.
Vandy's interesting because they have 3 Tylers in their starting lineup this year. So it's Team Tyler this year.
Team Tyler this year, yeah. Tyler Nickel.
Yeah, Harris and Tanner, I think, are the 3 starters. So,
speaking of Hubert Davis, guys, one of his dudes. Yeah. I remember that now.
IU was like chasing Tyler Nickel pretty hard.
I remember that also. So yeah, you have Byington at this point. That's kind of high risk, high reward, and can definitely build a chip stack and start playing with more house money at Vanderbilt, which they have some of it, from what I understand.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that was a pretty good summary of the I guess both of you. They're more than, like, when Bob and I talk about this, they're more than just 2 tiers. There are multiple tiers, and as we say, like, every school's a little bit different about what the expectations are based upon what year they're in, kind of has a little bit of influence. But like I said, like, because this is almost like no Hold'em or Texas Hold'em poker, time isn't nearly as big a deal as it used to be. It's just literally like, okay, well, how many good wins or meaningful wins have you stacked up in the time that you've been there? And how many embarrassing, like, humiliating losses, not just on the court, but also, in the recruiting trail? How many times have your rival's been able to basically, stand over top of you and laugh at you as you, like descend down the down the corridors of the bottom tier of college basketball. So that's kind of the way, again, when we talk about the chip stack, it's kind of a PR issue. It's a little bit like what we talk about in politics, like, is the candidate up or is the candidate down? What's their trajectory? So it's all this kind of stuff wrapped together, but we kind of hope that, using the chip stack model just gives people at least a conceptual idea of like how the tenures of coaches can rise and fall dramatically based upon that, those kind of changes. And so I think every year we'll probably be doing some exercise like this at the beginning of the season,
right,
where we kind of just like take a look and say, okay, where are people in the hot seat, and how do we think this is going to play out?
And again, I mean, everyone uses hot seat, and that's one of those things where a hot seat to me always equals a hot take conversation of what have you done for me lately, where I think when we look at it from a chip stack standpoint, it's a matter of what's actually the pathos here that we're seeing, or the movement that we're seeing over the course of a coach's tenure, why they were ascending, why they are descending, what's causing dissensions, what's causing ascensions. And when you take a look and you compare a guy like Mark Byington to a guy like Micah Shrewsbury, the comparison there is, you have one guy that maybe the expectations weren't as high as the other one. One's coming with much higher expectations in many respects than the other guy does. One's underperforming, one's overperforming relative to the the zeitgeist of college basketball. And that does make a difference in this. Oftentimes it's more, everything that, nobody doing this on any channel is actually influencing anything. I think they're just reflecting what the influence is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wait, you mean to tell me that Lamont Paris wasn't winning as much? I'm shocked to find this out. I'm a South Carolina donor. I'm going to stop giving money.
Right.
Putting it in perspective, but it also helps us maybe understand a little bit more. And we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're just going to kind of wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Hoosier Nation, want a smarter take on IU sports? Then check out Crimson Cast, your go-to podcast for Indiana football, basketball, and beyond. Hosts Galen Clavio and Scott Caulfield bring you game previews, instant reactions, history, and context to make Indiana sports come alive. From the biggest moments on the field to the storylines shaping the future, Crimson Cast keeps you informed and connected. And after years of saying bring back the Bison, IU actually did it. So if IU listens to Crimson Cast, maybe you should too. Just search Crimson Cast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube.
And welcome back to X's and Joe's. Mike Wiemuth and I is over here, and I'm Bob Moats. And real quick, just to kind of throw out, if you haven't subscribed to the Back Home Network, so you can get get notifications and exclusivity to Crimson Cast, Assembly Call, us, the football programs, the sideline stories with Trisha and Sydney, a bunch of amazing content. Do so, and if you also want to up that to becoming a member and getting on the Substacks, we'd love to have you there on the Substacks and the Discord. Mike and I do a lot in the Discord, and just like to interact with people there. So give that a shot if you get a chance. So as we wrap up, I kind of said this to you go now, the old joke. You've been here, you've been here too long, or really we need you to leave immediately, versus we're going to let you do the graceful end of the season and the coaching carousel starts. It's almost like the coaching carousel now is you're actually throwing children off the merry-go-round to their parents when they start screaming, right?
Exactly. You gently kick them off as the carousel gets close to where the parents are. Yeah.
Right. Hey, did you come in with one? Yeah, you got another one. You're fine. Don't worry about it. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm just seeing Bill Belichick being thrown off of a jumping horse. I'm kind of enjoying that visual right now.
Yes.
Won't make a girlfriend joke about being on the carousel either.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're here with this idea that you just may not get the full season, because when you're talking about tens of millions of dollars going into rosters, that's not chump change.
Yeah.
when you're talking about trying to preserve those, for lack of a better term, investments, that's a conversation piece. And I think that that's what, your good friends in Happy Valley decided a few weeks ago. I think that's what they decided down in Baton Rouge, what they decided at Auburn. And now in basketball, I know that Alford left early. He was kind of shown the door early, if I recall correctly. There's some others, but I have a feeling that we may be seeing some more of this in college basketball as well, that if you cut fish and bait. Well, no, Chris Holtman, it was him. Was it last year when they lost to IU?
Yeah,
was it last year? A midseason termination. No, it was the year before, and they brought Diebler in to coach him.
Yeah.
And Diebler, and then that begs the question: if you have marginal success as the assistant taking that team over, do you keep that interim in place, or do you just go and hop back on the roulette wheel and hope that the ball lands on a guy you want?
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem, is that there's so much luck that is involved in it. I mean, they're obviously ADs have to get credit for like making good hires and bad hires, because obviously they get fired or promoted or get raises based on those kind of hires. And look, college sports, and we talked about this before about the psychology of fans and programs. It's all comparative. We're all comparing ourselves against our rivals and other teams. You can't tell fans to ignore what the other fans have in this social media age. It's not like your parents like, well, don't pay attention to what Johnny has, down the road. It's like, well, that doesn't work anymore, unfortunately, within sports. And believe me, you're seeing this play out probably the most with college football programs in distressing about their relative position compared to what Indiana football has within their coaching position. Why can't we have what IU has? How can IU and their winning, lack of success in the past, how can they do that and we can't? We're LSU, we're Auburn, we're Penn State. Right. And so, it's tough because, and we're probably I know we're going to have a conversation maybe down the road. I know our friend Bo Haynes had kind of proposed this idea of a follow-up to our conversation before about, is there really, blue blood jobs anymore? Is it really, something else? Is it just about, just the roulette wheel of lucking out on the coaching search? And I think that's a really relevant question. And it's not about what's right or logical. It's just like, it's the reality how fans and schools navigate basically the PR fallout of losing too much on the field relative to the teams they're comparing themselves to. And you even think about it in another domain, like think about like the corporate world.
Yeah.
Like, how would you articulate that scenario where your rivals are doing better than you and your shareholders are asking you what the bleep is going on? It's like, imagine that like shareholder meetings. Like, well, you see, folks, the reason our competition is beating us is because they hired a better CEO than we did. So you just have to be a little bit more patient while we continue to drop down in market share while we're getting trampled on by the people that we're in competition with. Like, how do you think that would fly? Now, with all the money involved with college athletics, it's very much like that. I mean, this is very much a business, and it's like, you can't just pretend that what the other schools are having advantage over you is just your own personal feelings. It's actually now money, and there's ROI involved. So there's just a lot more dynamics that are involved now than what we are accustomed to discussing in the past.
And I think that's the essential part of it. I loved how you brought up the CEO performance conversation that shareholders would have. That it is I think another dynamic to that is looking at the entire structure too, like who's on the board, like who's making the decisions. I think that the decision of a Louisiana governor to get involved in LSU football surprises no one, but shocks everyone. It's like, oh, here we go. Well, and again, it's like it's something that it's easy political points, by the way. Like if you're sitting in the communications department in Baton Rouge, you're like, I got something that's gonna endear you to.
Yeah.
We're gonna take this guy that was doing a fake Louisiana accent after walking in out of South Bend, Indiana, to come here, and we're going to just
Massachusetts, by the way.
right, a Yankee, and we're just going. He's not only he's not from Louisiana, he's not a Southerner, and he definitely doesn't appear to be a Southerner, and his PR skills are that of Genghis Khan. It's like you have a disaster. Okay, that's easy points to score. Why not? Why not pull that card? And so you kind of look at so the AD gets sacked, and now after the coach, and I mean, at this point, it's a massive house cleaning going on in the LSU athletic department, because you can only screw up so many times before you're going to get basically eviscerated. Now, does he land at a place like, I don't know, Colorado someday? Maybe, who knows? But these guys, it's like CEOs. They always find another job. School superintendents, whatever, university presidents, franchise managers at a McDonald's. They'll all find a place. They'll find a job eventually. Don't worry about them, is what I'm saying. You don't need to do a GoFundMe for Brian Kelly. He'll be okay. But it then becomes the question also, I think, and this is one that, I have frequently, which is, all right, so like your Hubert Davis, you're probably, your chip stack's down to almost nothing. But on the football side, he may be spending your money because now everybody's going to die.
True.
And the question is, how much do you want to go in the hole on the buyouts?
Right.
And so now...
Yeah, because the football and basketball team are pulling in some ways from the same budget. It's not like the it's like the Boston Celtics and Boston Celtics and the New England Patriots are
sharing the same books,
same pool of cash. It's like they are separate, but in college basketball and football, that's not quite the same.
And how much of your media dollars that you have to have coming in, and you have to have those media, how much of that do you want to say we're spending on past mistakes versus future investment? And that becomes a question as you start restructuring deals with coaches, as you're going into the new coaching, in the new coaching dynamic.
Yeah.
You're maybe seeing these buyout deals becoming less, like overall money will probably go down.
Yeah.
Buyout deals are probably going to be less generous. Contract terms are going to be less favorable, because you don't have money to burn anymore like you did 5 years ago. And programs literally are finding ways of burning their money by, hey, let's do a $95 million upgrade for student housing. Let's do a $125 million on the on the entire facilities and locker rooms and gutting everything out. And we have to show a brand new practice facility. We need, because that's going to impress recruits to come here. And you walk in and the kid goes, okay, I just saw your player compensation offer. I can buy my own PlayStation. I can buy PlayStations for everybody I know.
Exactly. Well, especially for the offers from the other schools that are clearly offering him behind the scenes. So.
Exactly. And so now it's like, are you really going to spend? If you're North Carolina, you're going to have to spend backwards. And also hoping that you can get a splash hire that's going to require a financial investment that's going to sell tickets more and more and push donations more and more. And in the case of Belichick, do you really think he's going to go get another job?
No, yeah. This, like I said, this is definitely the South Carolina plan. The North Carolina had. This is literally like the Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier just grab them just before they hit the links.
Yeah, or the nursing home, because I mean, it's one of So I think it's an interesting conversation where we're going to continue to have, keep looking at, keep revisiting, and I think we're going to and just kind of trying to figure out the layers underneath it that are going to kind of impact what happens when you're trying to figure out who the new admirals of the fleet are going to be. Yeah. And it's not even captaining a ship. It's basically who's there. And as we've said before, the most important decision you make, who's running it.
Yeah. Precisely.
So do you want to talk Moneyball next time? And I know we're going to get, we got Bill's number again. So we're going to get a hold of him. But we're also going to talk about, maybe on our usual show, talk Moneyball.
Yeah. So, I know we've been teasing this one for a while, but I think at some point we're just going to have to buckle down and actually just do a show on it. But we'll discuss the new NIL landscape and how it's basically forcing teams into some sabermetric style calculations and how to prioritize roster pieces and recruiting priorities in a world where you just don't have unlimited funds to spend on players. So I will try to do my best Jonah Hill impersonation of walking through what coaches are possibly looking at and what they're measuring in terms of what recruits they prioritize versus ones they might just let go out the doors.
I'd say in 3 weeks we're going to have we'll have enough data to kind of look at some of these guys, like a Lamar Wilkerson would be an example of that.
Right.
And looking at maybe guys that are considered high value, mid value, low value, and kind of what they're bringing to the table at that point in time. And that's that question, and maybe start looking at what that. If you're looking to build with smaller valued players, how do you do it? Because that's really the Moneyball conversation more than anything else. Because not everybody's going to have $22 million at a horse farm in Kentucky to give every recruit. So, right. So yeah, we'll talk about that, and then we're also planning on something with some of our friends from Everything College Basketball. Josh and I were talking today a little bit, and he sounds like he's intrigued by the idea of having the Burton boys come on and talk about IU, UK, and UL, and why this preview could be the most exciting 2 weeks in IU sports history, at least in this century, where football and basketball take over Indianapolis on the 6th, and we get ready to go on the 13th for more Funs and Games against going down to Rupp Arena. So we got some stuff coming that's going to be fun and definitely in the flow of college basketball at this point. So on that note, thanks to Bob Thompson for the music and sound of the show, and special thanks to John Ringer of ringdesign.com for designing the logo and look of our show.
Yeah, and this endless conversation was brought to you by the Back Home Network. Be sure to check out all the great BHN content, including the Assembly Call, Doing the Work, Football Weather, Big Red Carpet, Sideline Stories, The Dribble Drive, and Crimson Cast on YouTube and backhomenetwork.com. So until next time, I'm Mike Wiemuth.
I'm Bob Moats.
Take care, everybody.